Hi everybody, Dr. Sunil Dand, internal medicine physician. Welcome to another video. I want to talk in this video about a scenario which happens across the United States every single day, and it makes no sense whatsoever. I've seen it happen in many hospitals. It's happening everywhere, and that is over-investigation and over-treatment in people who are over the age of 90. Let me paint a classic picture for you. A 93-year-old who may not be in the best of health comes into hospital with altered mental status. They won't be feeling so good, and then they'll start to recover. But whether they're at home or in a facility, an ambulance will be called and they'll come into hospital, and the doctors in the emergency room will do some initial tests. They will do some blood tests, they'll do a CT scan of the head, and that will be normal, and then there will be what we call a full stroke workup. Now remember, this could apply to many bodily systems. It could even apply to whether a heart attack is being ruled out. But let's take this example. We're not sure whether this 90-something-year-old had a small stroke, even though they are recovering and they seem to be getting back to their baseline. So they will end up being admitted to the hospital. And within the space of 24 to 48 hours, this is so typical in the United States. Many people overseas won't believe this because these tests are not done overseas unless there's good reason. But that 90-something-year-old who was already recovering and just wants to go home will have an MRI scan of the brain. They may have an echocardiogram, a heart ultrasound. They'll have other blood tests, and they will end up staying in the hospital for 24 to 48 hours. And think about this. If this is happening on a mass scale, and we do have an aging population, the cost of this, millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars every year. And nobody pauses to ask the basic question, does the patient even want this? If we have a serious discussion with the patient or their family, when they're already getting better, and even if we found a tiny stroke, which isn't found most of the time, it won't change management. Why would we put this patient through a 24 to 48 hour hospital stay? Why would we do an MRI scan? Why would we do an echocardiogram? Why would we do maybe a carotid ultrasound? Why would we hit them with more blood tests when they simply want to go home and they're starting to feel a lot better? And this happens because of course, protocols. That dreaded word. Patient is being sent in as a stroke workup. So we have to tick all the boxes, even if those boxes aren't necessary. And not only is this a huge cost issue, but it's also an issue of putting someone who is older and at risk of more complications. The amount of times I see someone who's in their 90s come into hospital and they end up more confused, they end up with another complication, maybe pick up an infection, is nobody's business. This happens all the time, and there is zero common sense. Why do we do this to people? Now, I can understand if there's a serious issue, if somebody has lost control of one side of their body or they are seriously affected by an obvious acute illness. I'm talking about when somebody is already starting to get better and they come into hospital for more and more tests. It makes no sense whatsoever, and it is a source of great wastage when it comes to money and resources. It's not necessary. The quicker you can get somebody who's older back home, back in their more sane environment, the better it is for them. We should not be over-testing and over-investigating people who are much older, especially even if there is something found, it's not going to change management anyway. So I wanted to share that scenario with you. It goes on all the time, every single day. Zero common sense as usual, which is fairly typical for the way things are right now in healthcare and medicine. But while we're on the topic, I also want to discuss with you another situation of treating our elderly citizens not as well as they should be treated. I actually wrote an article about this once. There was a Normandy veteran, a young man who, as a teenager or early 20s, had stormed the beaches of Normandy in 1944, lay in a hospital bed, and him and his elderly wife were getting stressed because they didn't know what was going to happen with their bill being paid. Were they going to be an observation patient or an inpatient? And those of you who are not in the United States will not be familiar with this whole observation inpatient issue, but needless to say, it affects the bill that will be received. And I was thinking to myself, here we have this absolute hero, served his country, survived World War II, and here he is lying in a hospital bed in his 90s, stressing over how much his hospital bill is going to be. Is he going to be an inpatient or an observation patient? Ridiculous that we have this level of bureaucracy. Could he have imagined when he was storming the beaches of Normandy heroically in 1944 that his country was going to treat him like this one day? I bet he didn't. Very sad situation. We have to treat our elderly citizens with dignity and respect, whether it's regard to over-treating them and over-investigating them when it's not needed, whether it's with regards to putting them on a ridiculous number of medications, or whether it's with regards to the enormous bureaucracy of our current system. Thanks everyone for watching Dr. Sunil Dand. Feel free to leave a comment down below, especially if you are familiar with any of those situations. Check out my website, my health programs, and my free newsletter. Those links are in the description down below. Hit the like button if you like this video and the subscribe button for more similar videos in the future. We will speak again very soon.